Monday, March 15th. I'm Scott.
I'm Rim.
And this is Geeknights. Tonight, whatever happened to programming? I don't know.
You don't know?
I don't know. Let's do this. So today is a day to beware.
You kept saying you had some sort of crazy thing to talk about today.
I do, and there's a reason you must beware.
Well, I point out it's no longer a secret to everyone.
No, it's not a secret to everyone, but I don't know when. Is the Ides just March 15th, or does it have some hours to it? Did the is it over at 5 o'clock or something like that? Or
I think Wikipedia can tell you that.
Oh, that's possibly true. But anyway, the Ides are, if not now, recent. And they are to be bewared for many reasons.
Can you name any reason other than one guy got stabbed a long time ago?
I will tell you the reason.
And it's raining.
So, on Saturday, in a precursor to the Ides, right? The clocks were marched forward, which is a double-edged sword.
So I actually had a problem this morning at work with that. We have stock market and everything, so we made the time change.
Mm-hmm.
And we're not stupid. We're not like another unnamed company I worked for that shut everything down for an hour every year because it couldn't handle the logs going back in the fall.
Mm-hmm.
So we were fine, but monitoring, we have a thing that says, hey, if I don't see a log line from different things that are writing logs within, a few minutes, send an error saying, hey, this thing's not logging. And this is new monitoring.
Every single one of them said,
oh, shit.
I haven't seen a log in an hour.
Yep. And then a minute later, they're like, no, everything's fine. Never mind.
It's not that big a problem.
Nah.
So, there was the prelude to the Ides in which the clock moved forward, which is good and bad. It's good because now the sun is up at the correct time. It's not dark right now, right?
I wish we'd just go to daylight savings time and never come back.
Let's never move the clock back. Let's just keep it where it is forever. That's what I would do if I was in charge.
Well, they did. And then it was undone. We were that way.
Yeah. But anyway, But the problem with it is, of course, this weekend is an hour shorter.
Yeah.
So being an hour shorter, you need to get some more sleeps because you lost some sleeps, right?
So when did you go to bed?
I went to bed pretty early last night.
Nah.
But then at 4:30 in the morning, right?
Right.
I was awoken by a honking car horn. Now at first I thought this car horn was, perhaps some hobo had bumped into a car and set the alarm off, in which case it would stop shortly, But no, it was not a hobo. So the horn honked a bit more, and notice it wasn't honking with a pattern, It was literally a human being honking a horn, at, some patterns they just decided. And they didn't seem to be moving anywhere. It wasn't like they were going down the street honking like their cucaracha horn, It was someone's pretty much sitting still right nearby honking. So eventually I look out the window to see what the fuck. And I see this car at 4:30 in the morning pulling out of a garage. One of these really tight garages where the car just barely fits,
Did you see that video of the German guy?
No.
I make a thing the day later. It's the guy who lives... His driveway is the narrowest thing in the world to the point that he drives in, opens his car door directly into his house, gets into the house, and then rolls the car forward to close the door.
Whoa.
Yeah,
Anyway, so this van, it's like a minivan, is trying to get out of this garage. And there was a car parked, right, in front of the garage, but it's not blocking the garage straight up. It's basically like the car is like 6 inches too far back, so therefore the minivan can't get out of.
So he's honking to make this jackass move his car so he can get out.
Right. But there's no guarantee that jackass is anywhere within hearing range or will wake up and isn't in like a basement or drunk or who knows what. And this guy's waking up the whole neighborhood at 4:30.
Well,
this is why guns need to be legal, because I would have just sniped that guy in the minivan from my balcony.
To his credit, at RIT more than once, I would, be ready to go to class and I'd pull out. Remember in Colony, we lived in that cul-de-sac? And someone would be double parked in front of my car.
Mm-hmm.
I would basically just go to my car and hold down the horn and wait.
But not at 4:30 in the morning.
Yeah, if I didn't have classes at 4:30 in the morning, but had I...
See, here's the thing, right? if just looking at the situation itself, the guy blocking the garage is the jackass.
Yes.
As soon as this guy starts honking the horn as the solution, he is now also the jackass.
However, what do? What recompense can he get?
He could have just called 311. It's New York City. It would have been taken care of very easily.
But it might have taken a while. There was a chance.
The dude would have gotten a ticket. It would have done way more damage to that dude and would have done no damage to the neighbors. Now, I know that garage. See that guy who was parking there? I'm probably never going to know who that was or see him again. But that garage, I know that guy now, right? I know that minivan now because that guy lives there. So now he is a hated figure in the neighborhood, and I know who he is. And I'm sure all the other people in my building who are looking out the rear window know who that guy is now. And the building next to that and the building next to that.
To wit, what if he did not want to harm the jackass? He simply wanted, maybe he was in a hurry, something really important. He had to catch a plane.
So in this case, so what he did, right, is instead of harming, he basically, I don't want to harm the jackass. I'll just harm all the neighbors who are innocent neighbors and bring no harm to the jackass at all.
This man exercised his right to free speech. He was basically on the street saying to anyone who wishes to care.
He actually broke the law of no honking. There's a huge fine for honking,
not
especially
everywhere.
At 4:30 in the morning.
There's no honking zones. You got to find out if that's no honking zone or not.
I'm sure 4:30 in the morning, police, they can come up with an excuse to charge you with anything. They could have done, disturbing the peace, whatever.
You're always of the mind that what if it was just free speech? What if he was out spreading the word, the good word?
He woke me up, therefore he must die. And the Ides of March shall be upon... I guess they were upon me, but I will make it so that the next Ides are upon him. Maybe I'll chain his garage shut on March 15th, 2011.
Much sadder.
Then what's he going to do?
But also much more relevant. I built the new Geeknights computer, and I passed off the previous Geeknights computer to Emily, theoretically to use as a, prime computer, because it's a really fast computer. USB bus, dead.
How come all the computers Rim makes broken? All the computers of Scott's.
Wait, which one? The computer before this one still worked fine. I threw it away because it was too old to be used for anything.
I would like you to prove that computer would work. I do not think so.
It was working perfectly when I got rid of it with my faster computer.
And then it sat in the hallway.
Yeah, it might have broken at some point between when I took it out of the case and left it unprotected in the hallway for many, many weeks, tripping over it several times.
All of my computers, no problems, ever. Zero.
All right. The thing is, I Googled around, and the AB9 motherboard, which I'd picked for various reasons back in the day.
You picked a shitty motherboard.
Yeah, I picked a shitty motherboard. A lot of people had trouble with that motherboard.
That's what I'm saying. I never pick shit.
Okay, back then, though, when I bought it, the ratings were pretty high, and all the reviews on Newegg were like, yeah, it's a great motherboard, and here's all the reasons.
Uh-huh.
And in fact, I got the AB9 Pro because it was only like $5 more than the regular AB9.
Yeah, the thing is, Pro doesn't stand for professional on that motherboard. It stands for piece of rotten...
Rotten what? Rotten what? That's right. That's right. So what I'm going to do with it is I'm pretty sure that there's a voltage drop on the USB bus, right? I actually, for the first time in forever, diagnosed a hardware problem. So what I'm going to do is either, if I can't fix that problem, it's like a problem in the motherboard, I'm going to turn it into the file server because that thing has 10 SATAs. I can make it basically a RAID and make it the file server for like videos and everything over the FiOS.
Mm-hmm.
But it might be that the power supply that is feeding the USB bus, because there's different rails and everything, different voltages. That power supply is a piece of shit that I bought at a store, no-name brand, to replace the other one that was incompatible with the motherboard in the first place. It's possible the power supply is the fault and not the motherboard.
I don't have these incompatibility problems.
Yeah, well, I bought an 8-bit AB9, and that was my mistake. I should have bought an Asus with an Intel chipset.
Like I did.
You know what my new computer is? Asus.
Oh, does that AB9 have an Enforce or something?
Actually, I don't remember.
Via or what?
I don't remember.
It has an ICH-8R, right, which is Intel.
Yes. However, my new motherboard has the ICH-10R.
I don't know what my computer. My computer, the HTPC I just built has the H55, which is apparently the new hotness.
Yeah, sadly, I was teaching Emily a bunch of stuff about why I built this computer because she actually just ordered effectively the same computer I have now.
Mm-hmm.
It's about $300 cheaper than it was before, and she doesn't need a video card because my old video card's fine.
Mm-hmm.
The 7900 will play Half-Life 2.
Yeah, well.
Yeah, but I was trying to explain like the differences, North Bridge, South Bridge, and CAS latency and everything. And I realized that about 80% of that stuff is completely irrelevant to anyone making a computer nowadays.
Yeah, pretty much.
Like,
One weird thing, though, I do want to point out, though. My computer that's on my desk, right, which has DDR 800 memory,
Yep.
4 gigs, dual channel, right? In the Windows, like, the Windows performance score thingy, it gets a pretty high score for memories, My new computer, which has 4 gigs dual channel of DDR like 1066 memory, right?
Yep.
With a i3, right? The memory score in Windows is way lower, and it's like, what? It's also dual channel. It's supposed to be faster. What's up?
Not triple channel?
No, not triple channel.
I got triple channel.
I didn't. This is a home theater PC. It wasn't a set the house on fire PC.
Until some future crazy Matroska. Anyway.
Yeah, but I just thought it was really weird. I'm like, huh? And I'm like, I'm sure I could manipulate, because the motherboard has all those overclocking settings, which I just don't touch at all, because I don't want to, I'm no interest, and I don't want to, I'd rather have a computer that works and is quiet than is 1% faster. But I'm sure I could modify some memory timings to fix that situation. But who cares? The computer works. I don't need the faster memory. It works. So that's that.
So you got any news for me?
I do have some news that Windows Phone 7 series.
I got to admit, it's real high on my list of maybe when I buy my next phone, I might go that route.
I know. It's like you never would have thought you would go for the Windows Phone 7 series, right?
Never.
And it came out, and it looked like I expected it to look. It looks like, all the new Microsoft stuff looks. But they just had big announcements about it today, including the Mix 10, which is a Microsoft event, right? The one thing it's got right now, that they've showed that's like no other phone's got, that's like, holy shit, is fucking Netflix.
Holy shit.
That's a holy shit right there.
Just,
iPhone don't have no Netflix.
Just Netflix streaming?
Yeah, you'll be able to watch streaming Netflix on your Windows Phone 7 series.
That is
Android don't got that. iPhone has like Netflix app that lets you fiddle with your queue and rate things.
Free doesn't have shit.
Free doesn't have that, right? No, and it's like, whoa, Windows, that is freaking strong because it has Silverlight on it, right? That's why they were able to do this.
Oh, right, because Netflix uses the Silverlight DRM.
Yeah, but it uses some other DRM when you're not using Windows, but...
Well, it doesn't work on Linux.
Well, I think you can install Silverlight on Mac, actually, but...
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like, there are some Netflix streaming things that don't have Silverlight, but Silverlight is their default with the DRMs and such, but... It's, Microsoft also, they brought out this dev platform you can get today, to start making apps for it. And it's free, so I'm going to try it out. I tried out the Android one, too.
I tried out the pre one, and it was easy to make apps, but I just have no desire to make an app because I realized the pre is basically being relegated all the way down to like the low-end default crappy smartphone OS, I think.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's like all the built-in stuff on the pre works and is great.
Yep.
But that's all it does. It's like
it's
like they made a bunch of stuff that's like the core functionality of a smartphone. They polished it up real nice, but then they didn't give you any additional functionalities, like say Netflix streaming.
Yep. I mean, it's really sad, too, because I can't do basic stuff like iPhone and everything. There's a Scottrade app. Like, all the stuff I use, there are apps that just would do it for me. And on the pre, there's nothing. Like, no reputable company has any app worth a damn.
Yeah.
And half the free apps have ads in them. There's this whole ad thing.
iPhone apps also have ads.
Yeah.
This is not a thing that is unique to the Palm.
But I'm talking about, like, even the free apps that basically do nothing. Like, it's just a stopwatch. You can pay $5 for the stopwatch, or it's free, but it has ads in it, and it doesn't even work.
I'm really, I can't figure out, why they failed, because it's like they had the smartphone did a lot of stuff that no one else still is not doing, right? The IMing, unified, the email unified. They're doing a lot of stuff that is just better. Their UI is pretty great.
You'd think the Google phone would have
to
the
Android.
best universal search, but no, the pre, if you just start typing, it is the smartest thing in the world in figuring out what you want to do with whatever you're typing.
Yeah, well, I mean, all the phones have that.
But the pre,
point.
I think
but the pre, I'm talking about the things the pre has that no one else has. But
I saw a cool video. I got to find it. Someone basically he had a screen of 3 smartphones, and he types the same characters into each one by one, and shows you how they're all reacting in real time. The pre, it reacts faster and picks better.
Yeah, the camera is so fast compared to the other phones,
and they added video support to the camera that works just great.
Yeah, well, the iPhone 3GS has video. I think.
No, I'm saying the pre didn't until just recently. That was was like one of the biggest problems with the Pre is that you couldn't record video. And then one day a random update appeared and it added it.
Yeah. But it's like they have all this stuff, but it just like, I think it's just marketing or something that just they can't get people on it, you know?
The other thing that bothers me is that the Pre, I think at least the Palm Pre that I'm using now, has the best physical design of all the existing smartphones.
I don't know. The Nexus 1 is pretty hot.
Yeah, but I like the fact that the Pre has this tiny form factor. It's really an itty bitty little phone.
Yeah, it's also, you know, the Pre does have the keyboard, which the other people do not have.
Yes, it is the keyboard, and I like the fact that it's a vertical keyboard and not a horizontal.
It is probably the best one with a physical keyboard. I would say that.
Yeah, you're right. I should clarify. If you have a physical keyboard, it's the best
like if
one.
you want a physical keyboard, that's the best one, you know? But the thing is, I think the problem is, even though it has a physical keyboard, right, it seems to me like the people who want a physical keyboard, right, are, you know, is people who they like write whole big emails on their thing, in which case that keyboard isn't really good for that, you know?
Yep, but I mean, like what I do, my typical use is responding to basically Geeknights PR crap. Like I have to respond to people pretty quickly, so I send fairly long emails from it on a regular basis.
The thing that really bothers me is not so much whether I thought I really wanted a physical keyboard, but the thing is I never type anything really long. The thing that bothers me the most is simply an unresponsive keyboard. You know, it's like I want, you know, on a phone. It's why don't people program things? You know, every computer that has a user interface should be programmed in the following way. The following way is user input takes precedence over all other processing. If my computer is encoding a video and decoding a video and playing a 3D game, and I move the mouse, all of those processes should be paused. 0 instructions executed if I need the CPU power to move the mouse arrow around the screen because the CPU is 100%. If I start typing something in a box in a web browser, right, in a text box, and all like 100, I'm computing like pi out to the billionth digit, and the CPU is locked up, it should just completely stop figuring out the next digit of pi, give no instructions to that, no CPU cycles to that process whatsoever. If that makes it so that my typing in the box is 100% responsive, and all phones, all desktop user interfaces, every desktop user application should be programmed in this way. User input always comes first, whatever I'm doing, and everything else takes a back seat, 0 priority, nice, minus 1,000, I don't care, right? And this is how phones need to be. Even the iPhone, oh, it's so beautiful, oh, it's so perfect. I go to like NOAA.gov, and I try to type in my zip code to check the weather, and I push 1, and I have to wait like 2 seconds before it actually enters the 1 into the text box because it's busy processing some JavaScript on NOAA.gov. Pause the JavaScript, just 0. No, I don't care. I am typing here. Typing comes first, everything else comes last, right? There is no reason that computers can't be this way. No one does it, right? I mean, the Linux kernel added the preemptible kernel option, but even so, still sometimes you're not preempting when you should be preempting. So fucking get it right. If you could actually make a user interface always number 1 priority, I wouldn't care about a software keyboard.
So here's something really interesting that the Pre did. They had an update, recently, the one that added the camera functionality, and there was a note in the bottom about some weird UI update, and I read into it a little bit. Apparently, people had complained that WebOS was unresponsive, and they made changes, but as far as I can tell, they didn't actually in any way make it respond faster. All they did was make it appear to respond faster. Like they made icons load immediately, even before like the frame inside of it loaded. So it felt like it was a lot more responsive, but they didn't actually speed it up or anything as far as I can tell. And that seems to have allayed all the complaints. I think the best philosophy for this sort of thing is that if you can't actually get the OS to respond to something, because you might have a legitimate situation where you can't respond to user input, or you can't make like icons load as fast as you should.
As far as I'm concerned, if that happens, then that's a bug, but that's just me.
But what you should do is at least fake it. Actually, we have a projector at work, though this confuses people often, where when you plug it into a computer, it shows a Windows desktop on the display immediately based on the last Windows desktop that it had displayed. So it looks like it's there right away. Of course, if you actually try to move something, you realize it's just a screenshot, And we basically have a game of how long does it take for the vendor to figure this out.
Oh, the people coming to sell you stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had a couple of meetings with them today. That's why I wore the black blazer as opposed to my gray blazer.
Because you have to look good for someone to sell you stuff. You're not selling, you're being sold too. You should dress like a schmuck.
Well, no,
be
we were
like, yeah, come on, what do you got? You
So
know,
here's
if you
the
were
strategy
selling,
here.
then you dress up nice, like, please buy my thing, please.
Here's some strategy. So, 3 of us go to this meeting. I dress up like this and I don't talk. I just sit there and watch everyone else grill the sales guy. And I just sit there looking kind of very disapproving with a clipboard and I'm writing on it. I was just doodling. And then I asked like one question at the end. And the guy was basically scared shitless of me as far as I could tell. So you got to play these things out. And basically my question was, so how much does this actually cost?
So there's someone's. You always pick one person in the meeting whose job is to act as the price.
Act like the person who's actually making the decision who does not want whatever it is.
And then ask for the prices. And everyone else asks all the other non-price questions.
Yeah, or ask like the serious question like, so what do you mean this doesn't support sending SNMP traps? It's a monitoring suite.
Okay.
So I don't want to talk about the whole history of this, but as you all know, there's been this long, stupid history of the EU and the antitrust lawsuits with Microsoft. And they came to the conclusion that how are we going to get Microsoft? We're going to force them to either not include IE, which is a stupid idea, in Windows, or to include some various list of competitors to IE in Windows. And I think this is like the biggest example I've ever seen in technological history of completely missing the forest for the trees, of completely saying, here's a problem, the Microsoft monopoly. We're going to solve it by picking the stupidest possible aspect of the problem and then having the stupidest possible solution to that problem, thereby solving everything. So, all right, Microsoft, you have to put all the competitors' web browsers in your OS, or, you shouldn't include a web browser. So say Microsoft did the, all right, fine, no web browser. How are these people going to download Firefox?
Well, they gave you this. That's the thing they did is when you turn the computer on, it makes you choose a web browser that it will then install.
So Microsoft, in their infinite wisdom, decided, and I think this is brilliant, all right, we're just going to pick the top 7 web browsers in the EU based on some dubious metrics, whatever they are. You got to pick one of them. And the story here is that there are some weird freaking browsers that no one's heard of in here. And as far as I can tell, they're all basically either IE with a different interface or Firefox with a different interface.
Yeah, well, I mean, the thing is, when you load up this, European Windows 7, right? It lets you choose between, Firefox, IE, Chrome, Opera, and Safari, right? It says, here, pick one. And they're in a different order each time, but the randomness of that is actually, it was supposed to be random, but whoever coded it did it wrong. It's like Chrome is more likely to appear in the somethings, I forget, there's an article about it. But if you can click more browsers, and it'll give you like 7 more choices of weird browsers that almost no one uses.
Yes, like Green Browser, which I'm going to quote this article from pcpro.uk. Green Browser is your best choice of flexible and powerful green web browser. Meaning, essentially, Internet Explorer bashed with an ugly stick.
Yep.
And I don't know.
Pretty much all the browsers that are in the, more browsers section are either Firefox or Internet Explorer that are sort of mashed up. Like Flock is basically Firefox that's modified to have like all sorts of Flickr and blogging integrated stuff. It's basically Firefox with a bunch of extensions,
or
plus a little bit of polish.
Schlipner gets the bonus points for good name.
Yeah.
But all it really is, here's the relevant quote from the article. It's no racehorse.
Yeah, I think there's another one that lets you switch between Firefox and IE.
That's Schlipner.
Yeah, it comes with like the IE tab extension pretty much integrated into it, and it's like,
how stupid is the EU? All this fighting about Microsoft and their monopoly and whatever, and they decide to force them to install competitors' product. What if you sell a Ford car and they're like, well, let's say Ford made tires. Well, you have to give people the option of having Mazda tires and
Ford
Joey
owns Mazda.
JoJo's tires.
It should be more like if Ford made tires and they said, no, you have to let people choose between Goodyear and Bridgestone and something.
Yeah, but or radios. Say Ford makes their, the default radio that they contract out, whatever, and that's just in the car. You buy a Ford car, you get the Ford radio. And if they said, that's anti-competition, you have to include these 8 other radios, half of which either don't work or don't fit in the computer in the car in the first place. It just... This is the sad conclusion of this whole epic story, and it's such a whimper, but I foresee crazy problems going forward as people use these other weird web browsers and have, there's going to be some sort of breach of IE. And it's going to turn out that it's not a breach of IE. It's a breach of one of these crappy web browsers that, I don't know, 1/3 of people picked because it happened to be at the top when they picked web browsers.
Well, no, the thing is, in order to pick, I think almost no one is going to pick one of those crappy ones because you have to click, show me more to see any of those. Most people are going to click IE, Chrome, Firefox, Safari, or Opera because those are the only ones that show up in your face. And you're just going to pick one of them, and you're not going to click on the tiny thing that says show me more. That's then going to show you the crappy ones.
I feel like the real solution
I think it'll be less than 1% uses something else.
The real solution was to let Microsoft include IE and not bother with the browser war at all and focus on some other more fundamental aspect of this whole antitrust thing.
Yeah. How about, focus on some Apple antitrust? Like, hey, how come, you can't sync your iPod with anything but iTunes? And hey, how come iTunes won't sync with anything but an iPod? And
but
hey,
Apple doesn't have a commanding market share of computers.
They do. I'm talking about iPods here. I'm not talking about the computer Mac. Did I mention the Mac?
Yeah,
no,
but
I mentioned the iPod.
The whole
and
goal
iTunes.
of this was to address the fact that Microsoft has the majority of the computer market for consumers.
Oh, you know how you could fix that? Force companies that make software for Windows only to make it for every OS cross-platform.
So, all right, this is the problem. The EU also has very little power. Microsoft basically, in addressing these EU complaints, was saying, all right, we'll play by your silly rules.
Just go away. Yeah, do whatever. We don't care. Just go away. We'll do whatever silly thing you want.
And really, the EU, they screwed up in that they let Microsoft get away. They didn't actually get Microsoft. I don't believe Microsoft should have been gotten in the first place.
Yeah.
But all they did was force Microsoft to play by some arbitrary rule that's not going to affect anyone majorly in the long run. And Microsoft said, all right, fine. We did your stupid thing. Are we done now?
It's pretty much just a stupid, Europe versus U.S. thing. Basically, Europe is finding that, any U.S. companies, right, that are so big and international that they need to do they have a lot of business in Europe, that the EU can basically extract money from the U.S. by regulating these U.S. corporations that happen to do a lot of business in Europe.
Well, look at how many times,
let's say
Germany is a big offender of this because they'll always try to hit some American company saying, hey, you showed some Nazi stuff, that's against our law. And luckily, most American companies say, ha, okay.
Whatever.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Germany.
If they, they didn't like Nintendo, they could, go after, Nintendo of Europe or whatever, even though it's a Japanese company, it's like, if the U.S. was upset, they could do the same thing to Japan, via, Toyota or any other sort of, Japanese company. It's operating in the U.S. So it's basically just a way to disturb the economies and pester other countries by pestering companies that happen to do international business. So whatever.
It's just this whole situation really it's nothing more than nothing.
Yeah.
But anyway, things of the day. Stuff like this does not happen nearly as often as it should anymore. And this has such an anonymous /4chan/V vibe to it, especially if you look at this video or you look at these screenshots. So I don't know how many of you are familiar with the Max Headroom broadcast signal intrusion incident of 1987.
Max Headroom?
Are you familiar with Max Headroom?
Maybe.
Are you?
Yeah.
Are you really?
Yeah.
Okay, anyway, so Max Headroom interrupted television in Chicago, Illinois, like real broadcast television, on November 22nd, 1987.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just going to read from this Wikipedia article that basically sums the whole thing up. This is like the badass kind of futurism, cyberpunk, intercepting the broadcast and sending your own message out. But it's so random and 4chan-y and weird that, I don't know, it's surreal and cool in a way that very few pranks have ever managed to be. So the first occurrence of the signal intrusion took place during a WGN TV Channel 9 live telecast of some primetime news show. So the news show's on, and then suddenly, quote, the station's signal was interrupted for about half a minute by a video of a person wearing a Max Headroom mask standing in front of a swaying sheet of corrugated metal, which imitated the background effect in Max Headroom. There was no audio, just a buzzing noise. The hijacker was stopped after 30 seconds or so when an engineer at WGN changed the modulation of their studio link to the John Hancock Center transmitter, blocking this interception transmission. Mm-hmm. So think about that. In the 80s, someone managed somehow to override real broadcast TV with his own broadcast TV.
Oh, shit.
So later that night at 11:15 p.m., this is where it gets interesting. During Doctor Who, it was on TV, the signal was hijacked using the same video that was broadcast during the WGN hijack, but this time with distorted audio. The person in the Max Headroom mask appeared, as before, and this time he was saying, "That does it, he's a freaking nerd," before laughing and jeering. "Yeah, I think I'm better than Chuck Swirsky. Freaking liberal." He goes on to do strange things while periodically saying strange things like, "Catch the wave," while holding a Pepsi can. And it just gets more and more and more bizarre from there. But some other person appears, and this kind of happened and stopped. And to this day, no one has ever solved how they did it, who it was, why they did it, what they were trying to accomplish. And the person, no one ever claimed credit for it, as far as I can tell. And that's the end of it.
You want to, do you know about the Heidi game?
The Heidi game?
Yeah.
I do not.
So, in the year of, let me read the Wikipedia, I forget what year it was, 1968, there was a football game between the New York Jets and the Oakland Raiders.
All right.
Right? And this was like a huge game, right? Like gigantic. You know, the Raiders were the AFL champions in the previous year, right? These teams both had 7-2 records going into this game. And the game was back and forth. It was a competitive, great football game. Holy shit, right? And 7 o'clock came around. And at 7 o'clock, there was a movie, Heidi, sponsored by Timex, that was supposed to go on at 7 o'clock. But it was still like the third quarter of this crazy game. So they had instructions to switch to Heidi at 7 o'clock no matter what.
Ooh, I remember as a kid being mad every time The Simpsons was supposed to start, but stupid football went long.
Now, the thing is, people started calling in as it got close to 7. Some people were saying, are you going to cut the game off? Is the game going to keep going? And some people were calling in to say, is Heidi going to go on? Right? The network was trying to call the stations to tell them to not put Heidi on, right? To change the instruction, but they couldn't get through. And Heidi went on, and it was the famous Heidi game, and you can get the rest of the chat, the details on the Wikipedias and such. But this is a famous television interruption when Heidi went on in the middle of the football game, and barely anyone saw the rest of the football game.
But that was not a guy in a Max Headroom mask.
No, it wasn't.
Breaking into real TV.
But it was it was incredibly important, this Heidi game, because when Heidi went on, the phone calls went, holy shit. And it's the reason that they realized football was popular, because Nielsen ratings, that's just bullshit, right? But the Heidi game, by putting Heidi in the middle of the football, they were like, oh shit, the football is popular, right? That's when they realized, you know? So anyway, my thing of the day, we've been singing tra-la-la-la-la-la a little bit today.
A little bit.
Do you know Rick Astley?
I may have heard of him.
Rick Astley, yeah, some guy, right?
Yeah.
And, he's kind of cool because when everyone started Rick rolling,
he never gave up.
He knew that Rick rolling was awesome. He got it. He was in on it. He knew what was up.
Yep.
He went along with it.
I have a feeling if you approached him and said, I would like to pay your appearance fee simply to Rick roll someone, he would say, all right.
He'd say, gladly. I'd be more than happy to. Well, Mr. Trollolololo, Edward Quill, is alive and well.
So, does he speak English?
No.
Because I was saying, if there was somehow, if he lived in America now, or for whatever reason, I would be willing to pay to bring him to PAX and put him up during the Q&A and tra-la-la.
But anyway, there are many videos and many interviews with him on the internet, and I will link you to the specific one of him watching a bunch of other people trolloloing on YouTube.
That's my fantasy.
While people are photographing him and talking to him, and he even trollolos a little bit, and he says a bunch of stuff like that guy's got that guy's good at singing. That guy's got a yellow tie just like me.
One of my biggest fantasies has always been to see historical people watching internet memes about them, like George Washington watching Washington.
But anyway, this guy, when, towards the end, he says something that's pretty fantastic. He's like, I don't consider this parody. He's like, look at the joy that these people are having, right? And now I know that Edward Keel and Rick Astley are of the same.
Cut from the same cloth.
We need them to do a partnership.
Someone who has money, make that happen.
We need both of these talented vocalists to have some sort of duet situation of tra-la-la, never give you up, something, something.
Never gonna troll-lo-lo, never gonna...
Something along these lines needs to occur. Perhaps even something as simple as taking the two videos and copying and pasting them together, right? If not, bringing the two men together in a physical space.
Now, this gives me two ideas for PAX. Because, PAX, unlike most cons we go to, has that come up to the microphone, and it's nominally a Q&A.
Well, there's two
really...
microphones. We could get in the same position in both lines.
Oh, man.
And one person go up to the microphone and tra-la-la, and the person go to the other microphone and, Rick roll at the same time.
We could just time it and come up with some sort of bit where two people get to the microphone at the front at the same time and then do a bit.
That's what I'm saying.
But one thing to do is dress up as Trollolo and either have a little speaker that'll play Trollolo or be able to sing and actually Trollolo. The other thing is find out what it would take to get Rick Astley to come to the con with us and get him in line and perform perhaps the most epic Rick rolling that has ever been done.
He could wear like a V mask, right?
Huh.
And as soon as he gets up to the front, starts singing, and then take the V mask off mid singing.
Think about it. He starts singing, people are like, oh, it's just a stupid Rick roll, you asshole. But then it's really Rick.
That's right.
Oh, man. Or it's
the thing
a V-mask.
is, I think he lives in the UK, though.
Yeah, you got to pay him.
We had to get him to come to Boston. It's going to be a lot of monies.
Yeah, maybe for PAX West.
It's going to be more monies.
So you got to really set it up. So you get two guys, right? You combine the two ideas. One guy is two people are dressed in V-masks.
Where does he live?
Right? So it's me in a V-mask and Rick Astley in a V-mask. We get up to the microphones at the same time. I Rickroll in the V-mask. People go boo. I rip off the V-mask. People continue to boo. He starts Rickrolling. They go, ah, ha, ha. They coordinated it. But then they start to boo. He rips off the V-mask. It's really Rick.
That's getting a little complicated.
It is, but imagine the payout. I'd be willing to put forth if we took. The problem is if we took donations to try to do it, everyone would see it coming. Well.
That is a problem. Anyway, here's awesome videos, and there's many linked YouTube videos. If you go to the related videos section, you can see this Edward Keel Trololo man being very cool. He is an awesome dude.
That's pretty epic.
Yep.
So, meta moment.
Oh man, we got metas, we got conventions.
So this weekend is the last weekend where we are not going to be at a convention.
The convention after that will be PAX East in Boston the weekend after this weekend. In other words, the weekend of March 19th and 20th, nothing happening. The weekend of March 26, 27, 28, PAX East.
Penny Arcade Expo, East Coast, in the Heinz Convention Center in Boston.
Baltimore.
Yeah. We may be live streaming some stuff, but we're
going to try.
We're doing 3.25 panels at PAX. Most of them are on Friday.
That's good.
We're going to coordinate something, some sort of meetup, some sort of event where, I don't know, we'll figure something out.
So in April 2, 3, 4,
the next weekend in the same bad place, almost the same bad time.
Same bad channel. Anime Boston, where we are doing 4 panels?
We're doing 5 panels.
Oh, fuck.
We're doing, I believe, anime you should see.
Okay.
Bite-size anime.
Yep.
Anime openers from around the world. And I'll point out, guys, I'm going to spoil a tiny bit of that panel. I have the Gundam Wing opener in German. I have the Gundam Wing opener.
Well, now people are just going to get it on YouTube themselves. They won't need to come to the convention.
Yeah, but most people aren't going to know about this. They're not going to listen to this. We're going to get like random people at Anime Boston, never heard of us,
That's
come
true.
to this panel.
I hope so.
Gundam Wing opener in Arabic from Saudi Arabia.
Oh, snap.
But then here's the gold. So in Saudi
Gold,
Arabia,
Jerry.
they have an English channel and an Arabic channel. It was so popular that they then decided to put Gun and Wing on the Arabic channel. They took the Arabic opener to Gun and Wing that they had made and translated that into English.
Oh, snap.
Oh, man. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. That's not even dangerous. So, we're also doing the secret guide to running an anime club, aka the panel we've done more times than any panel ever. And I think we're doing, this isn't confirmed, the how to run a panel as our throwaway panel.
What?
Yeah.
Where did this panel come from?
I put it in there because remember, we have to do a minimum number of panels to get paid.
So why are we doing how to run a panel? We have better panels than that. Why don't we do like comics for the manga reader or something?
Because I put that one in, but they didn't want it. Also, that panel, we got to step it up. That panel's kind of lackluster.
No, but I mean, it's better than freaking how to run a panel.
Yeah, but
who's going to come to how to run a panel?
What panel will have more impact?
Harris. Okay.
Remember, we could just rickroll that panel.
So the weekend after that, right? March 10th and 11th, I'm pretty sure. Let me just double check it.
Is the Mocha
Arts Festival
in New
the
York
same,
City.
Yep, that's right. 10th and 11th in the same building it was in last year. It's going to be 1,000,000 degrees.
Yes. Now, even if
maybe
you're
it won't be 1,000,000 degrees because it's April. Maybe that's why they moved
even
the
if you're not
time.
into comics, I mean, this is ostensibly a comic convention. It is awesome. There is no human who would not enjoy themselves at the Mocha. If you're in New York City and you're a Linux nerd, you should be at the Mocha. You'll be pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, you only need to come one day. You know, you walk in, you look around, you check out awesome arts and comics and things, and you go home. And maybe you go out to dinner in the city. It's a nice day.
Yep, we'll be there. You might be able to go out to dinner with us.
If you're not a
If you can
schmuck.
find us and we don't blow you off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, you know, you'll probably see us walking around at the very least. I mean, I'll probably go there just Saturday. I don't think I'll go Sunday also. But,
Yeah.
you know, it's an awesome time, the Mocha. You should go. It's the win.
I believe the weekend after that, we have not confirmed whether or not we'll be there yet, is Nexus, which is a big rationalist thought atheist convention in the city.
Yep.
I haven't really planned much for that yet, but I'll note it because there's a decent chance we'll be there doing something.
Okay, and the final meta, at least for now, there is more metas coming later. Oh, no, there's a book club is
Carl
Cosmos.
Sagan's Cosmos, the
That's
book,
right.
not the TV series.
And we are experimenting with streaming still. We're going to try to do streaming at conventions, and we're streaming Geeknights and streaming some other things. But we are currently experimenting with Justin TV, and it seems to be working better than Ustream. So make sure to follow Geeknights on Twitter to be alerted to any streaming events. And I'm going to try to like download all our recorded streams and put them and work that all out. So
Well, once I build that server I was talking about, we're going to host video just straight up for streaming, in addition to, YouTube and whatever.
Yep. So keep your eyes on frontrecruiter.com's news section and, the twitter.com/geeknights and such.
Yep. I mean, don't expect, we're streaming this show, but it's basically just Geek Nights. We're not doing anything special. It's mostly for us. It's not for you. If you enjoy it, great, but this isn't
Yeah, we're
really-
streaming Geek Nights just to practice our streaming, but we are going to do other non-Geek Nights shows that are video shows specifically that are different. So watch out for those.
So, I believe you can introduce this because you're the one who brought this up when we were doing our screen test morning show the other day.
That is true. So there was this article I read, and the article is called "Whatever Happened to Programming?" And I read this article, and I was like, "Good God, do I agree with this guy? This guy is like speaking." It's when someone says something, and you're like, "Oh my God, you are so like speaking to me, totally." Oh my God, like a Valley girl will talk about like a pop star boy band, or a hippie will talk about the dead or something like that, right? So this guy was talking like that. I was like, oh, he is so right. And what this guy was talking about was how he learned to program, right? When he was 14, he would write, let's see, I'll quote him exactly. I'm not going to read his whole article, but he says, when he was 14, he wrote Space Invaders in BASIC on a VIC-20. He wrote a MUD in C on a terminal attached to a Sun 3. When he was 22, he wrote the guts of a text database system, still in C, now on a Sun 380, right? So, this is the kind of coding that he was doing. And the kind of coding that I learned to do, right, when I was a kid and also even in college, was the same sort of stuff, right? It's, you have these basic constructs of software programming, if, while, variables, right? Functions, for loops, right? These sort of basic constructs, depending on what language you're using and at what level you are. If you're in assembly, you don't have those functions. You have, jump and move memory and these sorts of things, and addition and subtraction. But programming was all about, you have to build this piece of software, and you have these basic components to work with. And you have to create an algorithm mixing, these simple constructs together to build a more complicated thing. The complex emergent behavior of a system that is just a bunch of simple things arranged in a complex way. And that is what programming is all about. And that is why programming is fun. It's like, I need to write a hangman game, and all I've got is variables and loops. How do I do this? And you solve this problem using these tools, right? But nowadays at work, the job that I have, and most jobs that programmers have, and most programming that is done is no longer this, right? Most people who program are not doing this behavior that I was taught to do, and most people were taught to do in college, right? Or wherever they learn programming. All people are doing now is they're taking libraries or frameworks and gluing them together, right? For example, I recently wrote a small script that would go to Google Docs, right? Figure out what documents I had, right? Download any documents that were up there in a PDF format or whatever, or doc format or whatever, and then save those documents to Amazon S3, right? So normally, right, if I was going to program this in, say, C from scratch, how would I do this? Well, I'd need to make a TCP connection to Google, and then I would need to figure out their protocol, and I would have to I would to construct a packet and send it over, and such, right? And I had to do all these little things, and I had to, with just the basic tool set, I'd have to construct all this stuff. But nowadays, it's a library. So what do I do in Python? I say import gdata, which is the Google Data API. Then I import Bato, or S3, which is the Amazon S3 API, right? And I say gdata.get list of documents. Then I get this list of documents in memory, and then I just have to manipulate it a little bit to change the format of it. Maybe it's strings, and I need to just change the shape of whatever that spits out. And then I need to take that new shape so that, let's say Google Data spits out a square, but Amazon S3 is a circle. I just need to round off the square. And then I say Amazon.S3 put data, the square, the circle that I've now circled, and then it's done.
Think about your work. You're a programmer. You know all about programming, like the basics of it, like, bubble sort and all that kind of stuff. But, and then, even the code I write now is basically the same thing. I spend the vast majority of my time coding in the design part first, which I like, designing, like, what do I want to accomplish? What's my flow? But then implementing it is 99% looking up the syntax of libraries. Mm-hmm. Like, what object does this take? What does it output? What's the name of the method I have to call? What do I have to give this method? There's at no point am I, like, maybe 1% of the code I write is the part I care about, doing the thing I want it to do. But 99% of the rest of what I write is just the glue between the pieces.
Well, now, see, here are the problems with this, right? Here's the good parts, right? If you want to do something complicated, right? Like, let's say, copy all your Google Docs to Amazon or something, right? It's actually pretty easy for a normal person to read the documentation and sort of figure out how to do it, even if you're not so good at programming, Because you can just read documentation until there's an answer. And they say, use this line, and that'll spit this out, and then use this line to send it over. All right. So it gives normal people who actually dare to venture into the areas of writing code, in Python or Ruby or something like that, vast powers to do advanced functionality that's not available in other software. Right. So that is a good thing.
Yep. And no one's going to argue that. It's kind of like when we talk about, changes in video games over the years, or how 8-bit, 16-bit. We're never going to say you should go back to the crappy technology because it happened to make a few things better.
Now, here are the problems with this, right? Problem number one is that a lot of these libraries that you're, importing to get these advanced functions from actually kind of suck ass. So what happens is, everyone out there who wants to do X, right, uses this library because it's the one, right, that's out there, and it has all the functions. But if it sucks, Now everyone using it is writing shitty software, and nobody's making the library itself any better because basically anything that happens in the library, even if it's open source, almost no one actually looks at the source of it. No one's investigating how it works.
Yep.
They're only concerned with their own code, and as long as there's no bugs in the underlying code.
I mean, my interaction with the Python SNMP framework or the SNMP like stuff is basically just, well, how do I make it work in my program? I've never even looked at what it actually is doing.
Yeah, and if it had a bug in it, right, what would you do?
I would code around the bug in my code. I'd be like, all right, if I try to send a trap out through it, it sends the trap wrong because it doesn't spoof the ID right or something. So I'll send it a fake ID and I'll make a wrapper around the library to send it the data it'll need, so I know that then the output of it will be correct. It's just a black box.
You might report the bug, right, to the open source project
If
it is open source, right? I mean, the GData API, I don't know how I think it's kind of open source. I don't know exactly how open source it is. I don't see why it would be closed. Google does open source a lot of things, but there are some things that aren't open source. So in that case, it is a black box. But very few people actually patch or will go and look at the code of anything, to figure out what's going on underneath.
I think there's a far more subtle danger here. Mm-hmm. And I run into this a lot. And a lot of times programming tasks seem very daunting. And imagine a non-programmer and you're trying to show them some code, or they're looking at some code, like not teaching code, but real working code. It is 100% incomprehensible, even though most programming languages, like the structure of them, is inherently readable. Make this variable, put something in this variable, do something with it, call this function, go here, all this basic stuff. But when your code basically is, use this function in this library, now take the output from that and use it in this library, now use this library, now use this library, it's all basically a wizard using magic words to make things happen.
Yeah, it's pretty much
logic,
like
it's just magic words.
Yeah, you're not solving a problem. You're not coming up with an algorithm. You're basically looking up in, a spell book. Okay, what spells are available, right? And one spell is upload to this, and one spell is download from that. And all these spells are already in these libraries, right? These spell books.
But they're all kind of shitty. It's like, all right, I got to
need to figure out which spells to cast in which order and how to get the rabbit that's created by the first spell to go into the hat that the second spell needs.
So I want to turn this rabbit into gold for some reason. I want to make a gold rabbit. All right. All right, I don't say the only spells I have are polymorph other, but it doesn't let me turn it into a mineral. It only lets me turn it into another animal. But I have some other spell that's like turn person into stone. And then I have some other thing that's, all right, turn stone into gold. So I take these 3 spells and make this really clunky framework that turns the rabbit into gold.
Yep. Whereas if you were writing in, say, assembler, you probably could have in very few lines turned the rabbit into gold. And it would be, if you were a quality programmer, it would have been a much more quality solution. And the thing is, this isn't just libraries either, right? For example, let's say I want to make a website, right? Now, most websites out there don't really need to be high performance, super awesome, right? A blog, whatever. But let's say you use Apache, the web server. You put up some HTML files, the server serves them out. Very nice. But let's say you need to do something advanced, right? Like, let's say Twitter, right? Instead of, say, you could write Twitter in, there are Twitter clones in every language now, and you could use like mod Python on Apache, right? You could also just write Twitter as a standalone application. It would open up port 80. It would accept incoming connections on port 80, right? You don't have Apache in the picture. Get all that stuff out of the way. I am writing a single program. I could write it in freaking C or anything I wanted. It opens up port 80. It acts as a web server. It reads HTTP, headers coming in. It figures out what to do. And if I did do this, the performance of, and the benefits of doing it well, and the ability to scale and the ability to control every aspect of the program would be so vastly superior. I've heard things like Meebo.com are written in C++. People are doing things like this. It is not unheard of, but fewer and fewer people are doing things like this. Now, one of the other negative effects of this that I see is that I think people are going to forget how to do this.
Well, no, I think you end up having 2 different kinds of coders. I mean, people who are just practical coders, working with real life code only, who didn't study code independently of the real world applications, who just have to get stuff done, will be very proficient at knowing the names of all the modules and libraries and how to link them all together to be the glue. but they can't actually address anything complex if the libraries don't already do it.
But I think that fewer and fewer people there will be less and less people who know how to modify or write a library, and then there'll be even fewer people who do it well. So many libraries out there just suck.
Well, I think a university education or, any sort of like theoretical education in coding will give you that. I think it makes it a more subtle problem is that it makes it very difficult for people who want to learn how to code to get into it, because the old adage, and I used to agree with this a lot, was, all right, if you want to learn how to code, the quickest way is to code something you need that works, because you'll be motivated to finish it. But if you just code something that'll do what you need it to do, you're just going to take libraries and bang them together. But if you learn how to code in a very simple, like that basic thing we were talking about the other day, if you learn how to code something in basic, you're going to learn all the basic logic concepts of what coding means, as opposed to the practical glue crap.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, in the end, the practical reality is that gluing different pieces of data together is 99% of what the world needs for everything.
Yeah, well, that's the other thing. It's like I'm sitting in my job, right? And it's like I have the skills to write a library, depending on the library, of course. I probably couldn't write libraries for certain things, but for other things, I could do a pretty good job. And for other things, I could do a great job. But I never do. Why? Well, because at work, no one's ever going to pay me to sit around and do that when I could just reuse something and get the job done faster and save more. There's no money reason to do it. So fewer and fewer people are going to pay anyone to write libraries. And basically, shitty libraries will dominate and software will get shittier and shittier. And I think actually, if software didn't get shittier and people actually were writing their code better, that we could get a lot more out of the hardware that we've got, And right now, I think that actually software might be getting shittier at a sort of, dangerous rate to where like our hardware is, we're really starting to lose. It's like you need to get that faster CPU because the software is crappy.
I am somewhat hesitant to go down that road.
Well, I'm not saying for like normal people, but you'll notice it in, say, large applications and scaling big things, like people are out there and what they're doing to scale things like Facebook and such, is my website has too many visitors, so what do? Well, I'll just have more web servers and a load balancer, and I'll get more database servers and memcached and all this stuff.
But at the same time, be careful, because so many people make the slippery slope argument of we should just write everything in assembler because that is the way to get, fast hardware made us lazy.
Yeah. Sometimes you should, though. And I think the thing is people are doing it 0 times. And there are the cases where they should write it in assembler, they're not. Or the cases where they should write it in C, they're not.
Well, look at how Java does it with the just-in-time compilation and like the way Java...
A lot of those LLVM JIT things are going to help us out a whole lot.
But it's the idea that, in an average program you write, 98% of the program uses like 1% of the resource. You've got one tiny piece of your program that is the resource-intensive part. And it's usually orders of magnitude more intensive than everything else, because that's where the work is done. That's like the loop in my case that scrapes the the tens of millions of log lines per second and, does something with them. Like that part of the program is 99% of the performance. That's the case where you hire someone or you let someone write an assembler program that does that perfectly. And then you have people like me do the glue around that library.
Yep. Well, I mean, you look like in Python, you can see, because in Python and many other high-level languages, you can write like a part in C. A lot of people write a game and then put the really intensive part they'll write in C and import that as, the library will be C. Like SciPy is a science library for Python, but SciPy itself is written in C. So SciPy is really fast and kind of awesome. And then you can just write easy Python code to use it. And if people would do those things more often, even when they don't have to, right, we could get a lot more performance and a lot better things. Now, the major problem that I have personally, and is why this guy, with his article was speaking to me so much, is that I hate writing this glue code. It is not what I learned to do. It's not why I like programming. It's boring and sort of painful. All I do every day is I have to look stuff up. Right? I look up the magic words and then I type them in. I look up the magic words and I type them in. I'm not solving problems, which is what I like doing. It's not fun. It doesn't satisfy my, it's not like why I like coding.
I'm specking out a huge program at work right now. Like I'm specking out the stuff that we're then going to write, and we're going to outsource to some people, some of the writing of it and modules and everything. And speccing it out, when I finally had time to do it, I sat down for 3 hours, like, how am I going to architect this software? That was super fun. Like, that was the most fun I've had at work in a long time. And then it was like, all right, how are we going to actually code this? And then it was just looking up libraries, looking up the capabilities of them. Actually writing the code is going to be horrifyingly tedious.
Yeah.
Because no part of what we're doing is novel. No part. What's novel is that no one has glued together all these individually solved problems together in a way that works before.
Now, sometimes, of course, gluing, creates many awesome things. Look how many people have done some awesome stuff just by gluing Google Maps to whatever or whatever, right? And it's so easy. That's why so many people are able to do it.
Well, it's also the most important part of information technology right now today is taking data sets that are not connected and somehow connecting them to accomplish some third goal.
Yes, and it is wonderful, except for the fact that it is really the actual act of doing it. Coming up with the idea to do it is solving a problem. How do I do this? How do I, make podcasting better? Oh, well, you do this and this and this and this and this and this.
Well, think
about it. And then the manual labor of actually creating that solution is horrendously painful and tedious and slow. And this is why so many people just say, fuck it and install WordPress rather than writing a blog, or, fuck it and using Ruby on Rails instead of,
This is the same reason it sucks to be a DBA, and like at RIT, they tried to trick people into joining the database concentration, and everyone took the first database class and said, you know what, fuck this. Because the fun part is, I've got 2 data sets. I want to mash them together and do X, and here's my process, and here's how I want to accomplish it. The not fun part is select X from table, outer join, blah.
So the thing is, actually, SQL is kind of fun for me, especially, not just normal, everyday, mundane SQL, but sometimes it's like you have some data arranged in some tables, and it's like, I need to get this complicated query, I need to figure out how many of these per those on Mondays, something like that. And that, SQL can be fun in that way. And that's sort of the problem is you look at things like, there's a lot of ORMs out there, an object relational mapper. If anyone doesn't know what that is, Django and Ruby on Rails have these, as many other things do. Basically, you can interact with a database without writing any SQL. Like Django, which I use, and that's, what the frontrecruiter.com runs on, and that's what I use at work, is, it's a Python web framework. And basically, if you don't want to, you almost never have to actually write SQL. But it's talking to an SQL database, but you don't write any SQL. You do something like, if I'm doing Geeknights, right, I would do episodes.objects.filter, category equals Monday. And that would give me a list of all the Monday episodes.
Well, look at what that is.
Behind the scenes, it's generating, select from episodes _ episode, where category equals, right? So it's generating SQL, and it's on the front end, I'm just dealing with objects. And this is really easy. The thing is, the SQL it generates is shit. I can get just about any page on our site, I can get all the data with one query, one clever query. Most of the time, it's making like 10 queries because it's just stupid. Right?
But here's
the
a
only
way around
benefit
this.
of using an ORM is that it makes things easier for the developer to glue. It has no other benefit whatsoever, and it has this severe detriment of making really stupid SQL.
So what if someone made better glue? What if that wrapper was super awesome?
It's not technologically possible. Is
No?
the problem. No, because objects don't match to relational databases. An object model and a relational model are not correlative. You can't do it. If you were going to use one of those no SQL databases, right? Like let's say CouchDB or Cassandra, which are becoming very popular, then you could have an object which as long as it's a object, can correspond to the schemalessness if you're using a schemaless one, right? You could, have an object that maps, right? And it would work a lot better. The problem is that these NoSQL databases are non-relational by nature. That's sort of the point. They sacrifice the relational features in favor of, different abilities to scale and clone and have a bunch of servers really easily and such, easier partitioning and things like that. The thing is, they're non-relational. So what do I do if I want to say code Facebook where Rim is a friend of Scott and I have these relations? Well, basically what you end up doing is instead of doing joins on the database side, you end up coding the actual logic of a join in your program. And now the server itself is doing the joining as opposed to the database server doing the joining. Right? And it's going to be a lot less efficient than,
Make a database of objects.
Compared to Postgres, which is really good at frickin' joining, compared to your Python code that's going to join, give me a break.
Yep.
So,
But at the same time, your Python code is easier for 99% of people to deal with than Postgres. I mean, I have trouble
But it's
even installing Postgres, and I use it as a professional on a daily basis.
yeah. But anyway, it's, it's just really, I want to write, the kind of code that is, the kind of code I learned, take these simple constructs, loops, variables, functions, etc., right? Even classes, and, build up, write the algorithms, make them better, make them faster.
Well, Scott, you know what you're saying?
C.
You're saying, I'll paraphrase, I should have stayed in college and gone into academia and gotten my doctorate in coding.
Not really. I mean, there are jobs out there you can get where you're still writing low-level code.
You could have gotten a job like that with my company.
No, not really.
Yeah.
No, I'd need to get a job, say, like, not writing like an Android app, but writing Android itself. Writing drivers for mobile handset things.
But you're just gluing the software and hardware together by calling the hardware, effectively API. Sort
of, but sort of not. You basically...
See, I think the point I'm making here is just that...
The thing is, the hardware API...
You can't make hard... There's this long sliding scale, and I think there are two factors here, almost completely separate scales that right now, at least for what we do, happen to correlate very strongly. On one side, there's the is this fun for me scale, which happens to correlate to is this just coding around libraries and gluing things together.
Mm-hmm.
And if we could somehow, I don't know if it's possible, break the two sliders so that it's fun to glue, which, you know what an example of that is?
Well, if
the
everyone...
YouTube doubler, in a very simple way, you made it really fun to glue things together. Of course, you sacrificed every other aspect of gluing things together to do it.
I don't know. The thing is, right, it's like when you glue things together, you have to do that little bit of work in between the two things you're gluing, right, to make them match, to get the square peg in the square hole. And when you're working, say, to combine Google Maps, that combining work is usually really boring and stupid. Oh, I have to remove the space from the end of the string. Oh, I have to parse this XML to get the name of something, right? It's just really stupid shit. If you're doing something on a lower level, right, that in-between work of gluing, say, a GPU to a game or something like that, right? That in-between square peg, turn the square peg into a circle peg so it fits in a circle hole work is actually far more interesting work.
Well, I think in that case, it's
a lot more
of...
complicated. There's actually problems to solve rather than just things to do. You have to figure out, oh shit, this GPU only does this and this, so I need to figure out something. There's actually a problem to solve as opposed to just, a magic word to figure out in some documentation.
Well, you could go back to what you were doing before when you were working on, like embedded stuff, batteries, things like that.
Yeah, but I have to go, figure out how to work on that again. It's been so long, right, that my skills in that area are depleted. I need to rebuild them. But yeah, in general, it's just this is the way that programming is going, and I wonder, it could be there's going to be goods and there's going to be bads, and I hope that we can, figure something out.
I think good in the long run, but not for, I think, from third factors and just the advance of technology making things act differently. I think the really important part of this is not the technology, because the wrappers will eventually be really good. The problem is going to be the fun part, because it'll never be more fun for people like you to write code, no matter how good the glue gets.
Yeah, I think that's why you look at, like, what was that game with the
alchemy game?
Yeah, the alchemy game, the Codex of Alchemical Engineering.
Because you're basically just doing the fun part of coding. I mean, I even enjoyed that game.
Basically, that's the epitome of what the fun part of coding is.
But that's the epitome of a good game, too, because, look, it was simple enough. You could brute force it. It was a game that anyone could play, and yet it rewarded mastery if mastery was your goal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's the kind of code I like writing. But nowadays, it's pretty much like, imagine if you basically... It's like playing the Codex of Alchemical Engineering with cheating pieces, like.
But they don't work just quite right.
Yeah, but it's basically if you had that plus cheating pieces, well, the game becomes sort of boring. It's like, oh, I just take this cheating piece and I win this level. Oh, here's the piece that beats level 2. Oh, I need to beat level 3. There's 10 pieces to choose from.
But see, level 3, you'll have 5 pieces. And they're all black boxes, and you put something in one side and do something to it, and stuff comes out.
You go on Google and you say which piece beats level 3, and someone says, "Oh, piece number 4 beats level 3."
But then someone else says, "Yeah, it only beats level 3 at first, but if you let it keep running, it randomly spits out salt." and just keep spitting out salt.
That's because it's something bad in that black box that you'll never look inside.
Something bad in method.
I think what I would just think, anyone out there who is coding, at the high level, gluing libraries together, my message to you is to just look when you're using something. Let's say, you're writing something in, I guess, try to use open source stuff, first of all. That way you can look at code. And then when you do use an open source library, let's say you use Pygame to make a game, or let's say you use Ruby on Rails to make a website, or let's say you use, Apache, right, to make a web, something. Go look at the code of the thing you're using, because that will help you, get a better understanding of what your program is really doing, right? And look at the code of Ruby on Rails. Look at the code of Pygame, and then when you need to, don't be afraid to modify that underlying code, because you know what? That underlying code is written by schmucks just like us. They're not some geniuses who are better than we are. They're just other coders who decided to actually write something underneath. If maybe like...
Well, depends. Some of them are geniuses.
Some of them are, but even so, the code is probably, it's there. You can read it.
Well, the thing is, if they're geniuses, the code's probably really understandable.
Yeah, and even then, even geniuses, the code isn't perfect. There's got to be something wrong with it, or you can, even if there's nothing wrong with it, there's probably ways that you can modify that underlying code for your specific use case to make it a lot more useful to you. In which case, do it, because, as opposed to writing you might as well write a huge block of code on your side, on the outside of the black box.
Just add an overloaded method that takes a different kind of object.
You could just write like one line inside the black box that does everything. So why would you, just because you're afraid to look inside, you've written way more code than you need to. Don't do that.
Well, let's just return device.urandom. Add that to everything.
Yeah. So look inside the black boxes when they're open source. Fool around with them. Learn how, and then you'll be able to write your own libraries, and maybe you'll write the next thing that everyone uses that's like Ruby on Rails. That'll be, as opposed to just being the next user of Ruby on Rails.
I just think the key is to focus on the enjoyment part, because if coders want to enjoy this one type of programming, as long as they know that it exists and they can still do it despite the glue, and the glue will still get done because that's where all the money is. The money's in the glue. The fun is in the rest. And as long as coders like to code, the rest is going to get done.
No, the thing is, the money isn't actually in the glue, right? Well, I guess it depends.
Well, money's in the glue up to a point. If you want to make between, 60 and 110K.
If you want a job, right? If you are a gluer, you will probably get a job, right? That pays money, like me and Rim, right? However, if you want to make a product that you can sell, you want to make the piece that is being glued. Google makes pieces to glue, right? Django and Ruby on Rails are pieces that you glue. And those people who make these things are making mad bank, right? Through having consulting businesses or selling the product straight up or selling services associated with the product, right? So, there is money in making the pieces to be glued, right? And Twitter is a piece to be glued. Think about it that Facebook is a piece to be glued, not the glue itself. And there is jobs, if you want to work for someone else in being a gluer. So there's money all around. But a lot more people make money being gluers than making, popsicle sticks.
Well, there's no more demand for it. I mean, I guess when I say that's where the money is that 99% of what businesses need and what the economy, what everyone needs is two things that aren't glued together to get glued together. So that's always going to be where the money is. Because someone's always going to say, I want my Salesforce to connect to my blah. And then someone's going to have to write some JMX adapter or JDBC thing to get the data, massage it, and stick it in the other thing.
Yep.
And a lot of these things will get more and more custom as people, internal, I got to connect my particular Salesforce that has these weird fields to this particular ticketing system that has these particular fields.
Yep.
And that'll never be fun to do for anyone.
Nope.
I think that's good enough.
That was good.
This has been Geeknights with Rim and Scott. Special thanks to DJ Pretzel for the opening music, Kat Lee for web design, and Brando K for the logos.
Be sure to visit our website at frontrowcrew.com for show notes, discussion, news, and more.
Remember, Geeknights is not one, but 4 different shows. Sci-Tech Mondays, Gaming Tuesdays, Anime Comic Wednesdays, and Indiscriminate Thursdays.
Geeknights is distributed under a Creative Commons Attribution 3.0 license. Geeknights is recorded live with no studio and no audience. But unlike those other late shows, it's actually recorded at night. And I purposefully didn't put Chase Gordon in this meta moment. I was going to do him in the Wednesday meta moment.
I noticed something strange just because the people pointed it out in this Ustream.
Mm.
You basically close your eyes while you're doing the show.
Yeah, what am I looking at?
I don't know, but it looks funny because your eyes are just closed. You're kind of just like looking down, like I'm doing Geeknights now. I'm nodding and I'm acting like I'm talking to someone, but eyes are closed.
Yeah, I'm not looking at anything.
Huh?
If I was on video, I'd keep the eyes open.
We'll see.
Well, I kept my eyes open when we did the show the other day.
You did.
Yeah, so,
See, what you should do is close your eyes during a panel because it's really unnerving.
Why would I do that?
Imagine that if we
I don't close my eyes during a panel.
Maybe if we did a whole panel
I don't think I've ever closed my eyes during a panel.
and we did close our eyes.
Because I always look at the back wall, or I look at people in the audience, or hot girls in the audience, or whatever.
What if we did that? We just, we know what our slides are. We have it memorized. If we just kept our eyes closed for the whole panel,
We'd fall off the stage. You go, oops, trip over the wire. Whoops.
that'd be great.
No. You can fall off if you want.